The cover page of One Piece Chapter 1095, titled A World Where You're Better Off Dead, features the Yonko Buggy the Clown chasing a squirrel monkey who has stolen his red nose. Now this one here might just be a tease of some stuff to come. Obviously, since this is a monkey we're dealing with, some sort of intersection between Buggy and Monkey D. Luffy can be assumed. Also, this little guy's eyes are pretty similar looking to the rubber goggles Luffy made for himself while in Gear 5. Stealing something from Buggy could connect to a ton of silly possibilities. However, the implication here is that the monkey believes Buggy's nose is a fruit and therefore food. And the only fruits worth talking about in this series are, of course, devil fruits. We've never actually seen the Straw Hats get their hands on an actual devil fruit over the course of their journey. The closest we ever got was Luffy fighting on Dressrosa over Ace's Logia fruit. That just goes to show how truly rare these things are. One of the non-devil fruit using Straw Hats having the choice to eat one would be beyond hype. That might seem like a whole lot to tease with a cover request, but don't get it twisted, these fan requests have proven to be just as revealing as any color spread. To kick things off, we begin with the stampede of several Marine officers. The same urgent message from before was blaring over loudspeaker. Saint Saturn, one of the 5 Elder Stars, has arrived on Egghead Island. All Marines below the rank of Rear and Vice Admiral were to evacuate the area, effective immediately. They were told not to look back at all. Even a glimpse of His Grace would not be tolerated. These guys could not understand how the Elder could already be among them. And one of these fools is still looking over his shoulder. They'd all begin to gossip among themselves in awe and noticeable fear of this surprising development. One would speak of how he had only ever seen the guy's face in portraits. I wonder where those portraits would even go. Are the Gorsei worshipped by some people and treated as holy figures? Another was more concerned about the many streaks of lightning. Now that is very interesting to me. So is it literally lightning? Or is this a hockey thing? Is the whole Conqueror's Hockey lightning thing a visible phenomenon? Or is this not hockey at all? If you guys have any idea, let me know. They speak of how the guy is even above the Celestial Dragons, that one of the Gorsei can boss around an admiral like it's nothing. But that's actually an understatement. When Akainu complained to them about the whole Luffy versus Doflamingo fiasco, they treated that man like a new addition to the group chat and took turns roasting him. We're talking about the biggest bully in the Marines, the Fleet Admiral. He just had to take it. In fact, although they don't exactly boss them around, the Celestial Dragons had no problem throwing insults at the Fleet Admiral either. The question then became, why would someone of such high status come all the way here from the Holy Land? One thing I love about One Piece during world-shaking events is that we always have guys like these that are kind of like the echo chamber of the world. Whatever they're saying and or speculating becomes the version of events that the world eventually comes to know. They have a lot of questions, and the world government has a lot of secrets. Whatever actually makes it to them will most likely become knowledge to the public on some level. Hence the need for them to distance themselves from the truth here and not see that one of the gods of their world is a cow spider abomination. As the lightning continued to surge overhead, Saint Jay Garcia Saturn absolutely reeked of malintent. Either that, or the fact that he probably smells like cattle. The Marines of a high enough rank to remain in the Great One's presence began to yell at Bonney for stabbing one of the 5 elders. Now, in the last chapter, Bonney's attack definitely looked a whole lot better. With a wider look, she pretty much just hit this guy with a thumbtack. He is huge! The Marines were in a total uproar and all prepared to shoot her down. You know, it's behavior like this that doesn't help how the Celestial Dragons see these people. Imu forbid you get stabbed and everyone around you decides that the best way to protect you is to all unload their rifles at the attacker while you're still right there. Stella cried out Bonney's name in dismay as she continued to grit her teeth and cry. As his eyes began to glow in a terrifying way, Saint Saturn told the insects beneath him to quit squirming. Which is one hell of a thing to say when the itsy bitsy spider can be a description of your life story. He made it clear that if he didn't desire to be stabbed, he would have just dodged. Saturn blasted his power directly at Bonney's head, knocking her away with a spurt of blood. But before she fell, he grabbed her like a broken doll. Your average Celestial Dragon is terrifying enough because of what they represent. But man, to actually have the personal strength to back it up is crazy. Sanji yelled Bonney's name, but when he tried to approach, he experienced the very same sudden blow to the face and was repelled. Saint Saturn removed the blade from his bearded area, and to Franky's shock, the wound disappeared. So we've got teleportation, some kind of headshotting ocular ability, and self-healing. That's a pretty good amount of abilities already. But I want to take the time to apologize to all the Sanji fans out there. Your Tin Man of a hero is already spurting up blood. We thought he might actually do something here, but it's not looking good at the moment. After that, these Marines decided to look like idiots again by taking the opportunity to apprehend Dr. Vegapunk. Saint Saturn, however, is too high up the ladder to get played by such a foolish tactical error. He told the Marines to maintain distance and not give their enemies an opening. All they needed to do was remain calm and keep their weapons aimed. Looking down at the Admiral, Saturn spoke of how unprecedented it was for Kizaru to be so slow in getting the job done. Kizaru apologized profusely for his failure, but admitted that he's gonna need a second to recover. He didn't believe he'd be able to move for now. And there you have it, folks. Luffy gave this man a beating unlike any he has ever had before. Kizaru cannot even move. Even Garp couldn't do this much to Kuzan. That last attack was really something special. Looking over at a thoroughly exhausted Luffy, Saint Saturn could understand why this was the case. And from there, it was on sight. Saint Saturn immediately tried to stomp on the Warrior of Liberation and end his life. Now, I want you guys to remember this for later. We're gonna come back to this. Just before Saint Saturn's spider leg ran into the ground, Franky did his job and hit Luffy out of the way with a strong right. And to prove just how vulnerable Luffy is in this state, that was enough to make him bleed. After knocking him away, Franky went to grab him. Saint Saturn was interested to see that they were the sorts of pirates to stick together, even in the face of certain doom. Most would just sell each other out to save themselves after all. Franky couldn't help but laugh as he grabbed hold of Luffy. Even the men at the very top of the world wanted his captain's head. And yeah, I guess that is a worthy flex at this point. If only he knew that they have all been following Luffy's career for ages now. Saturn admitted that Luffy and Bonney's involvement in this situation was certainly unexpected. However, he was still very confident in their victory here, considering the entire island has been surrounded by their ships. With that being said, he also added that it would be quite the feat if they managed to escape from such a hopeless situation. He spoke of seeing what fate has ahead of them. I was honestly surprised to see him acknowledge something that was even beyond himself. Besides Imu, of course. As far as sudden developments go, we can't forget that the ancient Iron Giant woke up a few moments ago. Saturn then turned his attention to Vegapunk's Stella. There was no doubt that the Doctor's betrayal was a heavy blow to them. He was very grateful to the elderly Doctor for all that he had done for the Marines over the course of their arrangement. We then get a glimpse at Saint Saturn's sadistic side. He decided that he wanted to kill each of them in the cruelest order possible. He wanted them to die with the regret of daring to defy the world government. I can definitely see where the Celestial Dragons got their cruelty from. Now, Saturn has no problem taking his time killing them, but when the opportunity presented itself, he did not hesitate to try and kill Luffy. That to me is telling. Saturn began to tighten his grip on Bonney, forcing blood to erupt from her mouth. He blamed human nature. For whatever reason, people were all the more tempted by that which is forbidden. All Sanji could do was beg for the man to stop. He wondered why none of them were doing anything to save Bonney. Franky admitted that he can't. It was as if something was keeping him down. But I guess things like his arm extending were still possible. Vegapunk deduced that if this wasn't the result of technology, it must be the effect of some Devil Fruit ability. If Vegapunk isn't familiar with a Devil Fruit, then you know it is something special. While he squeezed her, Bonney cursed Saint Saturn for killing her father. He looked towards her grimly. He then realized that she was referring to Kuma. The fact that he had to realize it was Kuma is peculiar. It implies that Kuma isn't her biological father. Saturn continued to say that Kuma was born to be a slave. Not that he was born a slave, but that he was born to be a slave. He described the former warlord as a descendant of people who committed a grave sin against the world, which reminds me of how Zunisha is still walking off a life sentence for a past crime. Another one of One Piece's greatest mysteries. Anyways, Saturn described Kuma to be a survivor of the now extinct Buccaneer race, the mention of which was enough to leave Dr. Vegapunk speechless with his mouth open. Was this not something he was aware of, or is the mention itself the concern? Hearing this reminded Bonney of something that Kuma once said to her. As the Marines prepared themselves, she remembered him saying that when he was a child, he wanted to be a hero. Someone who could save people from suffering and grant their freedom. That certainly sounds like a fitting description for a member of the Revolutionary Army. Also, that one unnamed Vice Admiral is over here assuming a strange stance and is aiming his hat like a gun. Saint Saturn told all the Marines to aim for Bonney's head, which is so dark, oh my goodness. Bonney remembered Kuma saying that he wanted to live like the Warrior of Liberation, Nika. Bonney repeated the name as a question. Kuma confirmed and said that he has always looked up to the figure. Kuma could be seen dancing with a much smaller Bonney in the same stance Joy Boy is known for. As the legend goes, Nika would always come along laughing to the very same rhythm. Sanji continued to call out Bonney's name. Meanwhile, Stella told them all to stop since Bonney was only a child. Again, we have a mention of Bonney being a kid. The memory continued with a younger Bonney asking Kuma if she was going to be freed too. Kuma said yes with a smile, but it's clear that there was a lot more hidden behind it. This could mean that Bonney was held captive at some point too. But it could just as easily just be her saying this in general as a kid. We didn't see any celestial brands on her or anything like that. But now it does seem like Bonney was meant to meet Luffy. Bonney's Straw Hat stocks just hit an all-time high. Let us know if you think she'll join the crew. But from there, we move on to what will go down as one of the craziest One Piece flashbacks of all time. We travel back 47 years and find ourselves in the South Blue Sorbet Kingdom. A baby has just been born, and he is a pretty big one at that. Guys, I cannot believe it. We are finally here. We are finally getting Kuma's backstory. Kuma's parents were overjoyed to finally meet their firstborn child. After the boy had been born, however, Kuma's father approached a doctor that had delivered the baby with a bit of concern. The doctor happily assured him that he wouldn't tell anyone about the baby's blood. And from the very beginning, Kuma was a very happy baby. Sometime later, the same doctor rushed to Kuma's father Clap and told him that he and his family needed to run immediately. Apparently, there were world government agents in the hospital. Crying his eyes out, he apologized to the man. After being captured, Clap begged them to only take him since he was the one with Buccaneer blood. His wife was a normal human, so he begged them to let her and his son go. But that only resulted in a severe beating for him. As soon as he could walk, Kuma was used to lift ridiculous amounts of weight, a result of his Buccaneer blood apparently. We then see a young Kuma being whipped for being too slow while apologizing. In another case, he was threatened with death after crying too loudly. When they were reunited, Kuma's father questioned how his son was doing. With a smile, Kuma told his father that he was lucky because his master was so kind to him. After sitting his son down, Clap told Kuma that his mother had died and gone to heaven. Smiling through the downpour of tears, he spoke of how wonderful it was that she was in a better place now. Kuma cried terribly. His father reminded his son that he is strong. He knew that his son would be able to survive their torment. He needed his boy to be brave and bear it for him. Kuma didn't understand and questioned if death wasn't much easier. That's when his father told him that the warrior of liberation would come to save him. None other than the Sun God Nika. Clap told his son that the name of the god had been passed down through Buccaneer folklore for generations. Plenty of other cultures praise the sun, but theirs is easily the most specific. He told the child that Nika would arrive to take him out to sea, where he would be free under the sun. He mentioned how Nika always smiles. By this point, Kuma's dad had a pretty pronounced scar on his face. He got Kuma to smile when he said that the people never fail to laugh when they hear his drumbeat. He proceeded to make the sound, but suddenly, blood splattered on Kuma's smiling face. A celestial dragon entered the room and shot Kuma's dad dead, all because they were too loud. I can't even lie, this series can be really painful to read at times. There are times when the celestial dragons make the god hand from Berserk look like Boy Scouts. That was Clap's parting gift to his son, the one bit of history he was able to share about their people. It's no wonder it matters so much to Kuma. We then fast forward to 38 years ago in the West Blue. And all the real ones know what 38 years ago means. A celestial dragon thanked his peers for their patience. They had all gathered for an event that only comes around once every 3 years. He urged them not to miss their chance to participate in the Native Cleansing Festival. On stage, we see that he is surrounded by 6 treasure chests, each of them looking similar to the one Luffy got his devil fruit from. Perhaps one of these contains Kuma's devil fruit, among a few others we might know. The location they had decided on this time was a country unaffiliated with the world government. It was none other than God Valley. The name of the location was considered blasphemous by the supposed gods themselves, but the location received such a name on account of its abundant natural resources. The world government had just annexed the land, allowing it to be the site of their traditional human hunt. Why this needed to be their tradition is beyond me. God Valley's king was quick to voice his disgust towards their plans to hunt his people for sport. In response, he was slain by a crescent-haired swordsman. This was Saint Garling. He was told to slow down since he had gone hunting before the buzzer. His fellow Celestials found it hilarious, and their ugly women were fawning over him. The king of the country had already been killed. Because of this, Saint Garling would begin things with a negative 10,000 points. This was going to make things harder for one of the expected frontrunners. We get a closer look at the guy, and he looks really cool. He really does look a lot like Shanks. He claimed that he needed a handicap to keep things interesting. He ended up being known as a champion of God Valley, so I'd like to think that he still managed to be just fine. And even back then, he was one of God's knights. I'm curious if we'll get the chance to see more of them during this, or even just their leader before Garling assumed the position. To spice things up, the Celestial Dragons had apparently gathered even more people to be hunted along with the natives. They were all slaves and notorious troublemakers or sinners at that. It'll be interesting to see if there are any important faces among them. Just then, Saint Jay Garcia Saturn, who hasn't aged a day by the way, was reported to by a Cyberpol agent. The agent confirmed that they had tracked down the Buccaneer child that tried to escape. Apparently, Kuma had been captured by his fellow slaves. They were angry at him for being so selfish. They were placed in groups of 10 for collective punishment. If he got away, they would be left to suffer the consequences. So this beating was the memory we saw Bonney witness on Egghead. Just then, an especially enthusiastic boy called out to them. He recognized Kuma to be the star of the show as a Buccaneer. This made sense to the boy, since that meant Kuma carries the blood of giants within him. Kuma didn't seem to know who the kid was or what he was talking about. But yeah, Kuma is pretty much a half giant. That's pretty cool. We already know that the giants love their sun god too, so it makes sense. This boisterous slave was then revealed to be none other than a young Eva, and along with him was a slave girl named Ginny. While chomping down on some meat, she said that her big bro Eva was pretty big too. Eva joked that only his head was huge, but quickly switching the subject, he wondered why they all had such hopeless looks on their faces. He insisted that he wanted to continue living, and questioned what they all planned to do. We are looking at the earliest formation of the Revolutionary Army. I have no idea who Ginny is, but because of that, I am very afraid to see what is in store for her. Some fans are even speculating that she might be Luffy's mom, mostly on account of the food, I assume. Luffy's whole appetite thing seems to come from his father's side of the family though, so I'm not too convinced just yet. Either way, we are about to learn the truth about God Valley. This is ridiculously hype. If Kuma and Eva are here, it's hard not to hope that Luffy's dad Dragon will show up too, rallying them in an unprecedented stand against the world government while his dad and the future king of the pirates Goldie Roger face off against the Rock's pirates. I hope you guys are ready because the hype levels are rising like crazy right now. Sadly, One Piece is on break for now, but we've got plenty of videos coming your way. If you have any predictions or hopes as to what's to come with the story from here, let us know in the comments. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.